message I sent her, do not leave the terminal, I'll come fetch you. Okay.
She said she was
into the army and into local politics, and see on the left hand side you see the Criminal Court of Justice, and you see it's in Gaelic on top and then in English at the bottom, because the first language of the Constitution here is Gaelic. Second language is English, or second language here is English. Now, as we make our way back down along the river, we're coming back down along the river, and you're going to get good views now of the Guinness Brewery across on your right hand side. Founded by Arthur Guinness himself in 1759. Arthur took out a 9,000-year lease on this brewery up ahead on the right hand side, and we are 254 years into a 9,000-year lease at the moment. They brew about 3.6 million pints of Guinness there every day, and there are 14 Guinness breweries around the world, and the largest one is in Nigeria, in Africa, the largest Guinness brewery in the world. Now on the left hand side you see this small little park on the left hand side. You see the pond in the park, and you see the statue of the lady reclining in the pond on the left hand side. That lady's name is Anna Livia Purabella, named by James Joyce in his book Ulysses as the Lady of the River, but the local people call her the floozy in the jacuzzi. On the left hand side is an old British Army barracks, which now is known as Collins' Barracks, named after Michael Collins, the well-known rebel leader from the 1916-1922 period. They made a movie some years ago about Michael Collins called Michael Collins, starring Liam Neeson, the well-known Irish actor. Are you familiar with Liam? Yes. Liam was 63 years of age there about 3 weeks ago. He did the part of Schindler in Schindler's List, and also in Taken, more recently in Taken. This bridge here on the right hand side is named after James Joyce himself. This is the James Joyce Bridge. James Joyce was the author of Ulysses, or Ulysses. Also Finnegan's Wake, and the portrait of an artist as a young man. James Joyce, born here in Dublin, of course. He lived in Paris in France, he lived in Trieste in Italy, and he died in Zurich in Switzerland in 1941. Regarded as a literary genius nowadays, but he didn't make much money out of his books. So the bridge is named after James Joyce. The River Liffey here on the right hand side. This city is just a little over 1,000 years old, and it was founded by the Vikings who came from Norway and from Denmark. When the Vikings sailed up the River Liffey, they saw that the water was quite dark, and they called this place Dublin. And Dublin is the Norse Gaelic word for the dark pool. And Dublin is where we got the word Dublin from. And if you look very closely at a map of North America, you will see that there are at least 9 locations in North America named Dublin. The largest place is Dublin, Ohio. And one of the smallest places in America is Dublin. It's a suburb of San Francisco, right beside Berkeley University, Dublin. There's an area there, a small little area called Dublin. And the reason why the water is dark here is because when the river rises up in the mountains that I showed you just a few minutes ago, as it meanders from the mountains down here to the flatlands, it picks up the peat pigmentation in the water, and it gives it that kind of a dark look to it. It's not pollution in any form or fashion, it's just the peat. Now we're going to turn right here. The old Jameson distillery is in on the left hand side there. Jameson is Irish whiskey, of course. Here in Ireland we call whiskey Ishkebaha. Ishkebaha, the water of life. Ishke is water. Now coming up on the right hand side is the oldest pub in Ireland. On the right hand side. They've been serving alcohol here since 1198. That's the Brazen Head. You see the Guinness truck outside, parked on the double yellow lines, no better man. And the cops will never bother the Guinness trucks because the cops are their biggest customers. Come on. Now we're coming up, anybody with a military background will know the advantage of building your fortifications on the high ground. Do you notice that Dave is starting to climb up onto the high ground here? Down on the left hand side is the old fortifications. Now we're inside the old medieval part of the city. So what we have coming up on the left hand side is Christ Church Cathedral. It's interesting that both cathedrals here in Dublin are high Anglican cathedrals. Christ Church coming up on the left hand side and St. Patrick's Cathedral are both high Anglican cathedrals. This one here on the left hand side, they started building it in 1171 AD. This cathedral. Both of them, of course, once upon a time would have been Catholic cathedrals, but since the Reformation, they were disenfranchised from the Catholics across to the Church of Ireland, and now they're Anglican or high Anglican cathedrals. This one here, especially on the left-hand side. And this is Christ Church Cathedral. Now, as we swing to the right, you get a nice photograph. See to the left-hand side. That's a lovely photograph of Christ Church Cathedral there on your left-hand side. Now, as Dave comes around the corner, we're on to Nicholas Street, which is named after St. Nicholas, of course. And as we drop down off the high ground, just coming up in front of you, you'll see the spire of St. Patrick's Cathedral. St. Patrick, of course, was the man who brought Christianity here to Ireland. Back in the early part of the 5th century, he came here. There was no city. The city is only 1,000 years old. So the 5th century is 400 years before the city was founded. St. Patrick came here. St. Patrick's Day is what day?
March 7th.
Yes, of course. He came here and he came to this little location up here where the church is, and he baptized people for the very first time in 432 AD. He baptized people in a small well up here, and then he continued right around the country for the rest of his life, baptizing people and converting people to Christianity. Now we're going to take a little walk into St. Patrick's Cathedral. Now this is also a high Anglican cathedral. So we'll all stick together.
don't know if I can here.
Brian. Well, maybe it does not exist there, but maybe Boston.
What, like the size?